married or in a committed relationship looking for real advice on having love and enriching your relationship? You are in the right place. Welcome to The Couples Expert with Stuart Fensterheim.
Hello, and welcome to the Couples Expert podcast. And I wanted to say Happy New Year and Shana Tova. May you be sealed in the book of life to all of my listeners of the Jewish faith. This past September has a great many holidays, and one of the most important holidays for members of the Jewish faith is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we've just celebrated that. And I just wanted to welcome everybody and have this year be a year of forgiveness, kindness, love, and connection with your partners. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this podcast. Today's podcast is one that I've been working on and wanting to do for quite some time. Some of you know that I just got back from a cruise to England. And on my cruise, one of the things that always happens for me is I begin to think about, I'm trying to be on vacation, mind you, but it's hard to shut my brain off. And for the first couple of days, I always rethink and think about work and think about the things that I want to do for this next year after vacation. And one of the things that I was thinking about had to do with this podcast. And what I was thinking about had to do with my practice. And as a marriage counselor and someone that has been married before, and some of the issues that brings up for me. You know, I joke quite a bit with some of my clients, and I talk about that my marriage not being my first rodeo. And what that really means is that many of us come from marriages in which there are scars that we bring to our relationships. And I talk about this a lot because one of the things about the scars, bumps, and bruises is what we don't want to have happen, is we don't want to bring those into our current relationship. And when we come from a previous relationship, and it doesn't even have to be marriage, when we come from a significant relationship in which there are betrayals, what happens is we have a very difficult time trusting ourselves and trusting our new partners. And the question that always comes up is, how do we trust again? How do we see our own personal value, and will our partner see value in us? And what is our own sense of ourself and value that we bring to our new relationship? And will our partner see the value in us even when things are tough? So today's podcast is really on loving yourself despite a betrayal in a relationship. Now, when we talk about betrayal, for so many of you, what automatically is going to come up is the sense of an infidelity or a financial infidelity or a major event that has you not trusting your partner. But I think that there is a more pervasive problem, and that problem has more to do with, can we really see ourselves as valuable in a relationship? When there's been such negativity and problems in a relationship, do we really see ourselves as the best thing that happened to our partner? You know, I talk a lot about that with my emotionally focused therapy practice, that what you want to do is develop a relationship in which you can define your relationship as exceptional, and that the two of you see your partner as the best thing that ever happened to them. But what if we don't see us as being the best thing that happened to them? If our self-esteem is in the toilet because our past relationships have basically put us there, what do we do about that? And what does that hurt really look like? What does it feel like? So what I'm going to do in this podcast is do a 3-part podcast. The first part is, how do we really define what betrayal looks like in a relationship? Not counting infidelity, mind you. The second will be, what does the hurt look like? What does it feel like? And what's the experience like? And the third being, what are the long-term consequences about that? And I guess there's really 4, because the fourth element is, how do we recover from those hurts? And how do we move on so that when we're in a new relationship, this relationship is the best one that we've ever had, and we have a confidence that it's going to last a lifetime. So let's start with, how do we really define betrayal? Betrayal in a relationship is interesting because many of us grow up with the dream of having a relationship with someone that we one day get married to and ultimately have a family with. And the dream is really about just having one person. We meet them, maybe they're someone we met in college or afterwards, or maybe in high school, and that this person is our one. It's that person that's going to be our partner, our confidant, the person that we're going to share everything with, and the person that we can trust with things that we don't normally talk to other people about. See, the problem with trust violations, and we've talked a lot about this in other podcasts, is it's betrayal of information that we may have shared with our partner. I think that is the biggest betrayal, and that's why emotional infidelity is so problematic, is because that emotional connection, that emotional information that we share with people are things that we treasure and value. It's much more important than sex. So that a betrayal in a relationship, when a relationship doesn't work, when the two of you go after each other emotionally, and more often than not, relationships don't just become problematic on the last phase of the relationship. You've had periods of constant arguing, constant violations, constant problems, where kindness and friendship, and most importantly, vulnerability, which was once part of this relationship, now is shooting yourself in the foot. That you've shared information that gets used against you. Let me give you an example of this. One of the things that I shared with my ex-wife at one point had to do with a difficult phase in a relationship with my father. That he had a tendency to be pretty rough around the edges at times and very uncaring, and at times was really difficult. And the thing about my dad that you have to understand is that my dad really had a couple of phases in his life. One phase was he was this coarse, difficult guy who basically, one of the examples that I gave that was, in my mind, pretty negative, was he used to leave notes around the house for my stepmom that she shouldn't aggravate him. And I would find that so outlandish that he would do that. Now, later in his life, he softened so much, and my relationship with him became so wonderful before he passed away last year. But this would be something that I had shared with my ex-wife. And in the middle of a conflict, quite often, what she would say to me is, "You're just like your father." Now let's think about what that is. Now, one of the things I want to be fair about is I don't think she did it intentionally to hurt. But she was triggered. She was triggered, and as a result of that trigger, saying things that for me cut to the core. Not only was it a criticism of someone I loved, but it was my partner saying something that she knew would hurt me deeply. And that the way that I look at marriages and relationships and what a partner's role in a marriage or a relationship is this is a partner that you share everything with. You're authentic with your partner. You're vulnerable with your partner. You show them sides of yourself that no one sees, and that the trust that we instill in our partner is that they will take information that we share with them and hold it as precious and never use it against you. And at times, when relationships begin to take a dive, what happens is these types of information gets repeated over and over again in very malicious kinds of ways. But I want to be honest about this betrayal. This is not a betrayal of another person. It's an emotional betrayal. It's a betrayal that says, you're vulnerable with me, and as a result of your vulnerability and sharing of information, I now have power over you that I can use in positive ways or manipulate you so you feel the worst that you can ever feel. And that's quite often what happens in relationships. When relationships take a turn and they become less healthy, what happens is your partner, who is your confidant, is the person that you trust with all the things that matter to you, are now telling you things about yourself, using information that they know based on your sharing of that really vulnerable info as a way of hurting you. And we get defensive. We fight them. We tell them that we don't know what they're talking about. We share that we have a different sense and we know that it's not true, and they're just saying that. But here's the caveat. Here's the thing that sometimes occurs for a lot of us. We may say that to our partner, but there is a huge part of us that wonders what's the truth. Here's someone that loves me. We heal from that injury. The fight becomes less timely. It happens an hour ago, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. But do we forget it? Or do we begin to ask ourselves, particularly if we're not someone that is very secure about ourselves, but what if they're right? What if I am like that? And as our relationships deteriorate and these messages become more and more frequently occurring, where they begin to say things that are about who we are that we're not very secure about, we walk away with a sense of maybe I am unlovable. Maybe the experience that I'm having here and my partner who says they love me, and I believe more often than not that they do, but their perspective of me is now shifting to a very negative place. What then? When facts get manipulated and our partner's perception of us change from we're the best thing that ever happened to them to we're the worst thing that ever happened to them, and we get redefined in ways of controlling and manipulative and immature and other types of characterizations, we sometimes take those on and we believe them. And we hear these messages over and over again from the person that we love, from someone we care about. We begin to believe the message, particularly if we're not someone that wants the relationship to be over. That we somehow recreate ourselves in the image of our partner. And we wonder, can anyone other than my partner ever love me if I'm that broken? But what happens with a lot of these toxic relationships is our partner becomes the means that we define our world. And we hear this with other types of dysfunction, that the negativity of our partner's experience is how we begin to recreate ourselves. And then by the time that the relationship is at an end, we don't know what's real and what's not. We begin to think of ourselves in this negative image that our partner has left us with. And that, boys and girls, that, gentlemen and ladies, there's no betrayal worse than that, because that's a betrayal of our sense of our being. And that's the horror of previous relationships that haven't worked, which is why my belief about emotionally focused therapy and emotional connection and making sure that the relationship that you have is a strong, solid one is so vital. Today's podcast is sponsored by Before You Tie the Knot, 12 Essential Conversations. Planning a wedding and a future together can be stressful, and the couples expert is here to give you a little bit of relief. Whether it's now or in the future, the decision to marry is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. We don't know what we don't know, so I've produced a 12-week course for you and your partner called Before You Tie the Knot, 12 Essential Conversations to Have Before You Marry. There isn't a lot of premarital training and education out there, so I've created 12 modules that address the challenges you and your partner are likely to face as you enter into married life. This course is taken at your pace. There's no time pressure, and I've included some fun challenges and bonus exercises for you and your partner to explore and learn together. I'll be lending support as you go through the course by live Q&A sessions and discussions in a Facebook group exclusively for those of you going through the program. Before You Tie the Knot covers many of the issues and discussions that couples need to have before they get married, included family planning, finances, work-life integration, spirituality, and more. Go to www.thecouplesexperts.com for Before You Tie the Knot and find out what you need to know for a successful and happy marriage. So the next question is, what does the hurt really look like? The hurt is shattering our own sense of ourselves. And the damage that this causes doesn't just impact you in your current relationship, but it impacts you in family relationships, it impacts you with your friends, it impacts you with the work associates. Because when you begin to doubt your own integrity or your own perception, there's nothing more horrible than that. So that you go to work and particularly I want to share a little bit about this experience for me because I lived some of this. And what it did for me is it doubted everything that I did. Some of you know how passionate I am in working with couples. And I would go to work every day and feel like an absolute fraud. I'd feel like a hypocrite that I'm sitting with couples trying to help. And this is before I even knew about emotionally focused therapy. But I'd sit with couples trying to help them heal from broken marriages. And the only thing that I could think of as I was sitting there with these couples, what would come up for me during the sessions is, what the hell am I doing here? I can't help these guys. I can't help them because I can't even help myself. Because look at how my wife sees me, and look at what I am in her eyes was such a negative place that it became where I couldn't even sit in an office. I'd hear feedback from couples because, quite frankly, I had to separate out my own perspective and the skills that I had to helping couples and utilizing the skills, but feeling hypocritical doing it, but I was helping couples. Couples would say to me, I remember getting a message from a client once that said, I'm the best thing that ever happened to her. That she, as a result of my work with her and her husband, they've changed their life. Their life now was so wonderful, and I couldn't take it in. I thought they were talking about someone else. And as I sit there with couples and I have that feedback from people, and on the other side, I have the messages from my past relationship that said, I am not valuable, I am not worthy, I am not a good partner. How do I put those two things together? It was a mess. And therefore, I sat there with such psychological conflict that I didn't know if anyone in the entire world would ever want to be with someone like me. And that's what it felt like. The feeling of being a stranger in a strange land was craziness. So the questions that come up is, am I crazy? Am I lovable? Is there anyone in the entire world that's ever going to want to be with me? And how do I test that out? It took a tremendous amount of courage and strength to begin to take some of those risks. For me, emotionally focused therapy and reading about attachments saved my life. It was the way for me to make sense of some of what happened, to be able to define triggers as a desire for connection, that conflict and absolute panic and primal panic that couples begin to experience with one another is what leads to these types of interactions in relationships. And if you understand that the desire for closeness and the feelings of emptiness that couples have, that primal need gets in the way of being healthy with one another, and that your desire for reaching for your partner and feeling someone is there that's reaching back, when that's not there, what people do is really a shame. We hurt each other in tremendously unhealthy ways. And we need to understand that the desire for closeness and allowing yourself to dig down deep to have you be someone that reaches back, that is willing to really talk about the impact that people's words have on you, and not to be so strong, not to be that person that says, I just let it wash over me. I'm not going to let my partner know how I've been impacted by their words, that I'm going to share with them vulnerably and authentically what I need from them. And that my need to feel close to them because they are something valuable to me is something that the two of us need to do together. And that if we can have the right dialogue, if we can talk about the right things, if we can share our needs and our wants and our hopes, our dreams, our desires for our partner, we never get there. But if that hasn't occurred, we now have to heal. We have to heal from that place where we believe our partner's messages. I remember one situation that actually is somewhat humorous, but also sad at the same time, is my ex-wife and I were going through a divorce. And my ex-wife reached out to me, and she picked up the phone and she said to me, I want to give you some advice to help you for your future. And I said, why should I believe anything you say? Most of what you tell me is a lie. Your characterization of me has been awful. You view me in such unhealthy ways. Why should I listen to what you're saying, which likely is just going to hurt? And then I hung up. I felt so good. I felt so proud of myself. I looked at the reality and I was able to separate myself from it. Those are the kinds of things that you need to do with your own messages. Because for so many of us, the messages that we give ourselves is based on the perspective of someone that wasn't on our side. And we have to try to believe that we have the skill and the power within us to be that superhero for ourselves, and that there are going to be countless numbers of people out there that are going to want to have you in their life because you're that passionate, kind, wonderful individual. But you have to believe that's possible. And some of the ways that we have to do that is what I want to do next. So we've talked about these really awful interactions that occurred, and that the two of you have sent messages to one another that are really hurtful and destructive. And how do we not hold on to those messages? How do we help? One of the first steps of doing that is you have to grieve for the lost relationship without blame. You have to think about your marriage. You have to do, as I've called previously, an autopsy of your relationship, and honestly and intelligently decide what has been your responsibility. What are some of the things that you did that you need to learn from? And one of the first steps is you got to learn to let go. You got to let go of the marriage. You got to let go of the relationship. And it is easier said than done. But letting go is one of the most important steps you can take to relieve yourself. And you have to not get caught up on what's right and what's wrong. And you have to have confidence and have those people around you to send you a message of love and caring and desire for your well-being, that their perspective of you may have to temporarily be you seeing yourself in their eyes. And I'm not talking about other relationship partners. I'm talking about friends, colleagues, family, those people that you trust and respect, their impressions. And for the people in your life, you need to surround yourself for those kinds of people that have your best interest at heart, people that you can say, I know their perspective of me is accurate. They will be honest with me, and they will be positive, uplifting the people about who you are. And they can see the good in who you are. You have to allow yourself also to have some me time. You have to have time to where you can just get connected with who you are as an individual. And in those things that you've identified, areas that you need to work on, that you begin to work on those things. The biggest challenge for a lot of people coming out of really negative relationships is that they find themselves rather quickly getting caught up in new relationships. And if you haven't had time to grieve for your last relationship, looked at yourself, looked at the impact, you'll never find yourself. And finding who you are from a positive perspective is such a wonderful experience. I started this podcast, opening up the podcast, with wishing Happy New Year to those of the Jewish faith. And what we do as Jewish individuals in our new year, we reflect on our past year. And we look at what we've done well and what we haven't done so well. And we look and we basically make commitments. It's basically New Year's resolutions, but not resolutions like I'm going to lose weight, but more about personal character, more about what kind of person do I want to be in this world? Have I given to others enough? Have I cared about the homeless? Have I put my actions and my words together so that I do that? So what you're going to do is see the areas of your last relationship that haven't worked well, and you're going to put action into doing something about it. And when you do that, how you feel about yourself will counter all those negative messages. You take control of your own relationships. You take control of your feelings. You don't turn and look at other people and say, well, if they make me feel this way, that you are the master of your own fate, that you do the things necessary to be that person that you know that anyone in this whole wide world would be excited to have in their life. A caring, giving, loving woman, a caring and giving, loving man who treats women with respect and loves them and is passionate about them and makes the relationship a priority in your life. You communicate with many people in your life who send you the right messages. And you practice, and this is very important, you practice what we call mindfulness, being present, looking at now, not looking back, not looking to the future, but looking at the present. Who do you want to be? What kind of person are you? When you sense that betrayal from your past and you wonder, what is it about me that caused that? You knock that off the planet. You don't allow yourself. You stop the thoughts and you say, that doesn't matter. What matters today is who I am today. And today I am a wonderful, giving, loving, kind person that gives to others, both at work, at home, relationships with family. And yes, there was a betrayal in my life, but that person doesn't define who I am. That was just shit happens. And I'm going to have a different experience with a different partner because who I am today is different than who I was. And I'm not going to define myself by my ex-partner's negativity. We know that in every relationship that doesn't work out, there is learning. You have to look at those things. And we have to find the silver lining. Look more for the positives that you brought into the relationship than what you did for it not to work. I want you to choose happiness. Being clear that who you are as a person, who you are as an individual, is really the answer to healing from betrayal. That if a partner betrayed you, that was a choice that they made. Who you are, the woman or the man that you are every single day, is someone that loves and gives and reflects and heals. And that every single day of your life, from this day forward, will about creating a world in your life for those who are lucky enough to have you, in which you deal with relationships in vulnerable, caring, giving, loving ways, making your partner feel special, and having your actions and your words be something that are consistently there, and that the two of you are so lucky to have each other because both of you know that you're in this world with that one person that makes the world a wonderful place, and that the two of you are going to share and heal that as a couple together, having a life and a love that lasts forever. Take care, have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye now.
Thank you for listening. This episode has ended, but your journey continues. Head over to www.thecouplesexperts.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. Enjoyed this episode? Why not hit subscribe now and never miss an episode?